Thanks for tuning in and welcome to Marketing Bites, Restaurant Growth Unwrapped. I'm your host, Brian Siemienas, the Vice President of Restaurant Solutions for Nift. Today, I welcome our guest, Zack Oates, founder and CEO at Ovation. Welcome, Zack.
What's up, Brian? How are you, man?
Pretty good. How about yourself today?
Happy to be here with you.
Excited to have you. I know it's been a little bit since we last saw each other at the finance conference and development in Vegas, but looking forward to talking with you for the next 45 minutes.
Amen.
So starting off, prior to founding Ovation in 2018, you worked and founded a number of technology companies throughout your career. Can you share some of the highlights on how they have shaped you on your career path?
Yeah, so my very first company was called Imply Labs. And basically what we did was I built an algorithm to translate social media data into gift recommendations. And it was really cool because, when we launched, we got featured in Mashable. We got featured all over the internet. We had a Wired magazine wrote an article about us. I mean, like, our site crashed because we had so much traffic to it. And I was on the phone with, some of the biggest enterprise retail companies. I was invited there to meetings to meet with the leaders of these companies. And, we just had so much press around us. And I remember this one guy tweeted at me, and he sent me a message at the time he was tweeting. He sent me a message on Twitter and he was like, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for your website. I was able to find the perfect gift for my girlfriend and she was so impressed. And so just thank you." And that moment, right? It was cool to like the rush of it all was really cool. And like getting the phone call of like, "Hey, this is Wired magazine. We want to set up an article. We're writing an article about you guys." And I was like, "Wait, who are you with?" And they're like, "Wired." I was like Wired magazine? They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh yeah, totally cool." I held up the phone. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." But when that guy tweeted me just to say thank you for the product, that's when I had this huge shift of like, that's so cool that you can do something that affects someone on the other side of the globe. And it's something that wouldn't have been there had we not done it. And I think Steve Jobs often talks about, you poke here and something happens over there. And when you realize that there's so much in this world that we can create and build value, it becomes a whole different game. And that one DM to me shifted my entire mentality around what are we doing here and why do we create companies? And we create companies not because it's cool, not because like there's so much money in it, because honestly, it's like you're lucky if you get any money out of it, but you create it because you are obsessed with building value. You're obsessed with helping people become a little bit better and grow and progress and develop and move the world along. And that's always been at the forefront of why I do what I do and why I started these companies. But that single DM really shifted that for me. Like some guy in India found my product, used it, and his life was a little bit better because of it. Enough that he would take the time to tweet at me, which I think was really cool.
So as far as on the product, for those that have not seen or experienced Ovation, can you share the highlights of what the product does?
Yeah, so we are an operations platform for multi-unit restaurants. We help you find all of the answers that you need to help improve your operations, but without harassing guests with all these questions. So what we do is we leverage AI, and we start with a short form survey to the guest. And then it's a 2-question survey. We ask them, how was everything? You can follow up with a traditional long form survey if you'd like. But what it does is we're all about this engagement with that guest and making sure that the guests who didn't have a great experience feel heard, and that you can track who they are to make sure that they're coming back and they're not taking advantage of your hospitality. And then if they had a great experience, let's get them to do things while they're happy, while they got their phones out, that's going to drive revenue for you and your locations. And then we take all that data, we supplement it with Google, Facebook, Yelp, TripAdvisor, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub. We pull in all the public data, And we run it through our algorithm that will break it down to 34 restaurant focused operational categories and give you scores across all those categories. So you know, hey, we need to retrain on service friendliness in Sheboygan. Hey, our LA location is the food is too salty. Like, we're able to distill all of that unstructured data down into these actionable categories. And it's honestly not too dissimilar from what I did with Imply Labs, where we took all this unstructured social media data and boil it down into gift recommendations, right? So it's about taking this digital unstructured and taking action on it. And so anyway, that's why we work with some great brands like Muya's and Dave's Hot Chicken and Taziki's and The Great Greek and Friendly's and all of these wonderful brands, a number of brands that we're under NDA with, so I can't share who, but I promise that you have eaten at a restaurant that uses Ovation.
So as you say that, in 6 years, 2018, you guys first appeared on the scene. It's been great to watch because in short 6 years, and COVID was in there where things were challenging for everyone. So I can't imagine you were getting a lot of success with that outbound sales at the time. You guys have become a star in the industry, whether it's been the multi-units, you named a couple, obviously a lot under the NDA, you can't name them, or just up and coming brands. And, at the conference, or someone who I think was 4 or 5 locations was saying how great you guys, were to work with. How has this success come about? And is it what you expected when you founded the company to be where you are today in just 6 years?
I feel like as a entrepreneur, I am the eternal optimist, right? So I'm not where I am. I'm not where I should be, but I sure am grateful I'm not where I used to be, right? As a saying goes. And so, I thought that we'd be much bigger by now, to be honest, but I am, but that's just like the eternal optimist in me. But when you get into my financials and my projections, like I'm pretty spot on to where I said I would be when you look at things from a financial perspective, because I tend to be pretty realistic when it comes to Excel and pretty much an optimist when it comes to a whiteboard. So basically, I like whiteboards better than Excel. But I think though that when it comes down to it is we've struck a chord of this balance between we want to create a great guest experience in measuring the guest experience. I was talking with Bill Phelps, the CEO of Dave's Hot Chicken, the other day, and he goes, "You know why I was so excited about Ovation?" And I was like, "I'd love to hear it, Bill." And he goes, "Because when I would go to Dave's Hot Chicken, I had such a great experience from the time I walked in the door to the time I placed my order, got my food, ate my food, threw my trash away." And he goes, "And do you know what the only bad experience of the entire experience was?" I go, "What?" He goes, "When they asked me about my experience." He goes, "I don't want to take a long survey. Like, I just want to connect with them and share what's on my mind on my terms." And he's like, and it was kind of funny because when we announced how Ovation worked at the Dave's Hot Chicken conference, literally the whole room just erupted in applause when Jim Biddix was like, "And Zach, why don't you tell him how many questions the initial survey is?" And I said 2, and literally the whole room started applauding. And that is what I feel like, striking that chord of, guess what? With our technology, we've done so much work on our AI that we can take all of that unstructured data and still give you all the operational data that you need to make data-driven operational changes. So that way, we have customers who have, 86th the lettuce in an entire region because they got a bad batch of lettuce from their food supplier. And they wouldn't have known that without Ovation. Or they would have known way too late, or it would have bubbled up in some online reviews. But because they were able to do that, not only were they able to save the customers immediately, but they were able to fix a problem in a region that was very specific. And I think that's that promise and that the proof that that's been happening is the reason why people are talking a lot about Ovation, because they're like, yes, this is the ops we need, but it's with hospitality in mind. It's putting the guest first, and that's powerful. And so I think it's less about what are we doing and how are we marketing ourselves. And I think it's more a matter of the message of hospitality and operations. Whereas before it was like, you got to choose one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I first heard about you guys, and I think how it was explained to me wasn't correct. It was, hey, you can get everything you need in 2 questions, which I'm like, being the skeptic, I did brand health and all the research at Hard Rock, Darden, Margaritaville. And then when it got explained, I'm like, okay, I get it. 2 questions, and then you dive, deeper. And hopefully you don't get beyond the 2 questions because you just delivered that stellar recommendation. And there's, as you say, nothing worse. I take every survey on a receipt, no matter, they email it to me. And I just love it. I had one, I think it was 15, 20 minutes on a restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
I think it was longer than the experience may have been. And I'm just looking at this, and early on, someone I worked with on our research said, listen, don't ask a question unless you're able to do something with the results.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that, well, hey, this would be interesting to know, but what are you going to do with it other than annoy, the customers that are having to go through these lengthy surveys? So, kudos to that. You touched upon it. Do you think that there's obviously a lot of competitors in this space? What do you view as your number one competitive advantage over them?
So I look at it in terms of what do we do? What do we focus on at Ovation? It's operational excellence first and foremost. And that's what we're focused on. Again, we're an operations platform. But I think how we do that and are the 3 pillars that Ovation has is our real differentiator. So like number 1, tons of feedback, right? Lots of people taking surveys. We have more methods of taking the survey than I think any other company. And when we've gone head to head in pilots, there is not a company that comes close to getting as much feedback as we get, right? So I think that's number 1 thing is we engage with a higher percentage of guests. Number 2 is real-time immediate action. How do we get that happy guest to do more? How do we recover and track that unhappy guest? And we do that in a scalable way. Whereas other companies, it takes a lot of time to manage that feedback. What we found is that, for example, with Friendly's, they're getting 24 times more feedback than they got with their previous survey tool, but it's taking them a third of the time to manage it, right? And then number 3 is because, lots of feedback, that real-time one-on-one scalable engagement. But the number 3 is actually improving operations. So we have entire modules that will give GMs specific goals to focus on. It gives operators dashboards that they can track how each location is doing on those goals. And it's and giving that real-time feedback on it. That's the holy grail. There are people that have pieces of each of it, but someone who truly cares about hospitality and about improving operations, those are the people that we win deals every single time. I mean, like we've done, I think the number is like 24 pilots this year so far, and we've 23 of them have become customers, right? When someone uses Ovation and they care about hospitality and they care about operations, it works. And we aren't for everyone though, Brian. I mean, like there are competitors out there that are way cheaper than us, but you're not going to get the operational improvement. You're not going to get the bump in reviews and in revenue. And so that's our whole premise is we can't go down so low because our technology is such that it works and our service is such that we are very responsive, and we will set up those meetings and go over things one-on-one with you. And I can't give my software away for free and have everything that goes with it. And so there are people who, you're not going to get all the things that Ovation can do for you. They water it down and it's a lot cheaper. And there are people who want that, and that's okay. And that's why there's lots of room in this industry for a lot of people to be very successful. And I'm out there fighting for the guest. I want the guest to have a great experience. And that only happens as restaurants improve. And by virtue of doing that, that's going to increase loyalty, increase, happiness of both the owners, the franchisees, and the guests. And so that's really where my main focus is.
You talked about all the data you're getting, and to me, data is king. I mean, if it's a matter of being able to consume it in an actionable way, which you guys do. Certainly, 2024 has been a challenging year for the restaurant industry, to say the least. Given what you're seeing and all this consumer feedback and all of these insights, what do you view as the biggest challenge, and any thoughts on how the industry can overcome it?
Interesting. So I feel like there's a lot of data out there that says what we should do or shouldn't do. But I think at the end of the day, there's discussions about value. There's discussions about accuracy. There's discussion about this, but really what it boils down to is consistency. Are you creating a consistent experience for your guests, location to location and experience to experience? Because you are only as good as your most recent experience. And guess what? If you have a bad experience at a drive-through, it's not the person at the drive-through, it's the brand. Man, that brand never gets their stuff together because, I went there and they were so rude, right? And that's what it comes down to, is like, we need to make sure that our experiences are consistent. Now, we know that we're going to drop the ball. And so how do you remedy that? Well, it's a really simple loop of track and train and train and track, right? You got to track how things are going. You got to track and make sure that it's an easy way for your guest to tell you if something is going well or something isn't going well. And then use that data to train. And don't train with just company-wide stuff, but really get down to the GMs and make sure the GMs know what they need to work on, bonus them on improving, and see what happens to that location. And then what do? How do you bonus them based on what you've trained? You track. And so when you're able to track it and train and train and track, that's creating this upward cycle of consistent experiences. And then what happens is the value is not a factor because they know what they're going to get. And so if I go to a restaurant and I know that I'm going to spend $25 at Five Guys for a drink, fries, and a burger, and I go there, but I get exactly what I expected to get for that $25, I am walking out of there happy. If I walk out of there and there's not a lot of fries in the bag after I pull out the cup because they didn't overfill it enough, well, now that $25, and even though that was maybe only $2, a dollar worth of fries that I didn't get, now that entire $25 experience was terrible, and I'm not going back to Five Guys, right?
Yeah.
But if there's a way, now here's the crazy thing though, Brian. If you make it easy for that guest who had a bad experience to tell you about it, and you respond to them, now you got to respond to them correctly. And the reason I know correctly is because we have AI that'll help our restaurants respond to customers. And our AI is 10% better at recovering unhappy guests than humans are. But if you respond to them, that recovered guest is worth over 24 times the average guest, because they're going to come back more frequently. They're going to spend more money. They're more likely to leave you positive reviews, and they're going to come back more often. And so that's the power. The recency, frequency, spend all increase, as well as likelihood to leave you a 5-star review, which is extremely valuable. And so that is something that I think is so important to focus on, not just the tracking and training for the operations, but also the activation with that individual. That hand-to-hand combat is critical. We cannot afford to lose guests nowadays because it's too dang expensive to get new ones in the door.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right on that, Zach. And I think of two examples. Number one is timeliness of getting back to those guests. I was sitting somewhere, 5 days later. 5 days now might as well be 2-3 weeks. I mean, it's one that, in the brands that I oversaw, we were within a day or two, and even in certain ones had people over the weekend. But, The second one is that, recoverable. And my favorite is, yes, we know there's scammers out there that will complain to get something free, but you're so right. It's how you recover a guest. And even if you've got 8 of, 10 are scammers, if it's a legitimate complaint, take advantage of it. And, I was fortunate at Darden, Dave George, who was COO, but he was president of Olive Garden forever. The joke was always that, the GMs, don't be stingy if you have a problem on giving out the gift card to come back, because if it gets to my desk, your P&L is going to get charged 10 times what would have been yours, because if it gets to my desk, I want to make sure that guests, we're not going to lose them. And, it's when it's so short-sighted that, at the end of the day, if something's really screwed up, taking one item off of it, if it ruins an experience, is just, such a weak mistake for what you've spent to get that customer in the door.
Oh, completely, right? It's like, we'll spend $1,000 to get a guest in, and then we won't give them a free soda to get them to come back. And it's like, oh my gosh, like what? Yeah. And when we look at that guest, I think part of the thing that, one of the things I think is really powerful about Ovation that people don't fully understand is that ability to track that guest who had a negative experience, because most of us have a single mobile number, and that mobile number is the one that we use for all of our, for when we actually want to communicate with people. Now, yes, sure, we may have a second number, right? A few people have a second number. I don't know anyone who doesn't deal drugs that has a third number, right? Granted, I don't know anyone that has a third number, just to be clear, because I don't know any drug dealers. But I think that what it comes down to is that we use that mobile number to track that guest. And so when you take all of those experiences, like, hey, you didn't have a great experience, awesome, let me text you that gift card. And as opposed to just giving it, you text them, and now you have their number, and now you're tracking them. And now if they have another negative experience, you can track that. And now if they have another negative experience, you could track that. And so what you could do is, I always tell people, be more than generous the first time. Be generous the second time. Be skeptical the third time. Invite them someplace else the fourth time. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to fire your guests, but what happens is you need a way to track that guest first. And because we leverage the mobile number as the unique identifier for that guest, not the email address, what that does is that creates a very clean line to see, hey, is this a Ken or a Karen who's out there just complaining, looking to get something for free? Or is this someone who really did have a couple of bad breaks, but guess what? There was 5 great experiences in the middle of that. They left you a 5-star review. They, referred some people to you. They signed up for your texting club. They downloaded your loyalty app. They bought a gift card, and then they had another negative experience. All of that gets tracked in Ovation, and we make it easy for whoever is responding to that guest to see that data, to make educated decisions, to give context to that conversation, as opposed to it being, because it is not a unique situation every single time. But a lot of these platforms out there that are measuring guest experience treat it as a unique experience every time. But you need the context, you need the history of who that guest is to make sure that, look, if they just placed a catering order 2 weeks ago for $3,000 and they messed up an order today, guess what I'm going to give them? I'm going to give them $100 gift card. And I'm going to say, Brian, I am so sorry we messed this up for you. I appreciate you being such a great customer for us. Let me make it way up to you. I mean, here's a $100 gift card. I would love to have you back. And by the way, let me know if there's anything I could do on your next catering order. Now, bam, all of a sudden, Brian, you go from a guest who had a negative experience to someone who is like, I am a Zach Shack fan for life, right?
Yeah. No, you're so right. And I think the restaurant industry is catching up to others in being able to look at that historical. And as you say, having the tools, having the data there to make those decisions, it doesn't matter the industry. Poor decision making is still going to happen. I mean, I was at a Hilton hotel the other day, and literally have been diamond since 2000 something, and had a complaint and was like, well, sorry, get out. And it's one like, okay, I think maybe I've had like 3 complaints in my lifetime. I've moved a hotel once and, almost 700 hotel stay nights. But, to your point, that's something that, we talk about lifetime value and what a customer is worth. For some of those, again, there's some people that are unlucky, and I love your 3-strike mentality, because there's some that literally won't even give them 1 strike. It's, people are trying to pull a fast one, and, I'm not going to do something for $3, which is,
And you know what, Brian, there are people trying to pull a fast one, but at the end of the day, if you think about what percentage is it, what percentage are trying to pull a fast one, it's really low. It's really low. And actually, our data is going to show you that it's really low.
Yeah.
And so don't treat the 99 like the 1. And I think that's the thing that so many people do, is they're so afraid of being scammed by that one person that they mistreat the 99 people who genuinely had a bad experience. But with technology, with Ovation, you're able to track that person. You're able to track that experience. You're able to show how often they come back, what their value is, what their order history is, what their complaint history is, what their coupon history is. Because, for example, I know of people where they've complained a few times, but they didn't even redeem the offer. They were just grateful that somebody responded to them. So they came back of their own fruition, had another negative experience. But it's like, so treat them as such. This isn't someone looking for a deal. This is someone looking for you to be better. And so let's get better, right?
Yep. So we talk technology, and certainly in our industry, there's a lot of exciting things, happening out there as we see at the conferences. Outside of Ovation, what out there excites you the most?
I think there's a huge opportunity with loyalty. I think when I look at loyalty, it's like, I feel like people are finally in the restaurant industry, they're doing really good things. Like, I look at Big Chicken, right? They're a great customer. It's been amazing to see the growth of that brand and what they're doing and how they care so much about the guest experience, and led by a great team. And when I look at them, it's like they're doing really cool things where when you eat at Big Chicken, it's not just a matter of like, hey, you get your 11th order free, but you can build up points to get merch, to even go on a cruise, to meet Shaq. And so these are really cool things where they're realizing that punch card loyalty, while people have been talking for a long time about how that punch card loyalty isn't real loyalty, you're not bringing someone back in more often. You're just measuring how often they're coming back in. But now they're starting to do things that are really exciting. And I see there being some huge opportunities in the loyalty space that is can really transform businesses and increase the opt-in rates of these loyalty programs from 5, 6, 7% to 20, 30, 50%, by making it easy and making their better incentives. And we've loved partnering with different loyalty companies as we've been able to actually help increase loyalty downloads by 30%, which has been amazing.
You recently posted that you hit your 100th conference, which is a nice milestone. How valuable are they to Ovation, and why do you guys attend?
I think there's a couple reasons we attend. One is because this is such this is hospitality, baby. You know what I mean? Like, hospitality is done face to face, handshake to handshake, hug to hug, how you doing to how you doing. And I think there's something really powerful about that human connection. In this industry specifically, people don't get into this industry because they want to work in a cubicle and not talk to someone from 9 to 5. They get into this industry because we're people. We like people. We like to see people smiling. And so I think that's really powerful. The second reason is because I think it's a really great way to share some great learnings. I mean, we're able to get up on stage at a lot of these conferences and share some incredible insights that have improved businesses, whether or not they use Ovation. Because one of our values at Ovation is to build value for each other, for our customers, and for the industry, right? And so each other, that's our team first. We want to make sure that everyone here at Ovation is in the right seat. And then when it comes to our customers, we want to make sure that they're getting the best in class service and value and those, success reviews. And then for the industry, again, we have a 350 episode podcast, and that was created out of the desire to share good information with the industry. It started in February of 2020, right as COVID was starting. And we're like, let's share what we're seeing and what we're finding. And here we are over 350 episodes later. But that same ethos is what drives us to these conferences.
You're dead on these conferences. From 16 till, COVID hit, would go to my regular ones. And it was like, just when that first one finally came back, it was like, thank goodness, because it was just so missing them. And as you said, the people that you see regularly, and you may talk to them on the phone now, Zoom or video chat, but it's just so wonderful knowing that, okay, those conferences, you're going to see the people that, and love in the industry, as well as, get that insight. And as well, a lot of them this year is everyone facing the same problems. Everyone's trying to come up with a solution and help those around them if they can.
Yeah. Amen.
So as I was preparing for, our discussion today, looking back over your background, there's one, a lot of tech, but the one that jumped off to me was you're an author, and, the name of your book, Dating Never Works Until It Does. Yeah. You describe it as a lesson you learned on your journey of 1,000 dates to finding your wife. Please share more on the details of that one.
So, I actually kept a blog about dating. And so I went on over 1,000 dates before I met my wife. And every week I would write a blog post around like, what did I learn this week in dating? What's a philosophy I have? What's something that someone taught me that was really interesting? Because every cab that I got into, like almost every conversation had something to do with dating. And I asked everyone about what dating advice do you have? What marriage advice do you have? Because I'm just so curious on what people think. And what was fascinating was like, I just started collecting all of these like little gems, and I had a publisher reach out and say, hey, have you ever thought about turning your blog into a book? And so I was like, yeah, let's try it out. And I had no idea how much work it was to publish a book. It was a great experience though. And I learned a ton, but I think it's kind of, it's really interesting because I met my wife in a way that was like broke all of my rules. Right. So, and that's kind of like, I'll save you the $14 and I'll just give you the punchline, which is, I say at the very, it's 100 chapters, 100 small chapters. And the very last section is called, if you don't read anything else, read this. And after giving 99 pieces of advice, my 100th piece of advice is don't take other people's advice with dating. And the reason why is because you just got to do what the best version of you would do. And I said, if you did everything in this book, well, guess what? They would be dating me, not you. So you read this book, you take the principles that ring true to you, put them into your life, and that's really what it comes down to. And I think about that in terms of so many different aspects of life. But when it's like about building those relationships, building those friendships, I think it's so important. I'm still good friends with ex-girlfriends of mine. I mean, like my wife and I, we go on trips twice a year with one of my exes, and there's a group of friends of us that we go out and we hang out all the time, because I think it's building that relationship and the same principles of being a great first date and really caring and listening, and all of those things are what you need to do to create a great guest experience. And so I actually do a keynote, and it's called Dating Your Customers. And it's about how do you create that wonderful guest experience with things that are like with what you're doing with dating. Because when you're dating, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to go look you up online first. They're going to go check out your Facebook, your Instagram. They're going to go see, what's going on. And if it's if you look like a creeper, then guess what? They're probably not going to go out with you. Same thing. If they go check out your online reviews and it's not good, they're not coming in. And, but then when you create that great guest experience, when you listen and you make it easy for them to tell you, did you have a good experience or not? And the way you do that in dating is you ask them on a second date. Right. And so anyway, I think it's been really interesting learning that how similar dating and guest experience really is.
Okay, love it, and I still am going to get the book because I definitely at the next conference want to share back on that one. So although that fell under the questions about the industry, my favorite part of the episodes is getting into personal ones. Although that one was on a border, so I felt it was a good transition. So getting into some personal questions, Zach, if you could go back and give yourself advice as you started your journey, what would it be?
I think it would be make sure that you fully understand, or I would say pick a problem and solve that problem. I think in the early days of Ovation, we were trying to do a lot of different things. We were trying to be an all-in-one solution. And if you are ever in a situation where you're going to go with an all-in-one solution, just know that you're not going to get something that's great at everything. I would say pick a specific problem and solve that problem. In the early days, we tried to do a lot of things. We tried to basically be an all-in-one solution for multiple verticals. And if you're going to go with an all-in-one solution, that's okay. You're going to get a cheaper solution. It's going to be less expensive than finding best in class that work well together. But it's just not going to be that great. You can't be great at everything. And so at Ovation, we've picked restaurants and we picked operational excellence, and that's our lane. And we do that better than anybody else. But I wish that we had picked that lane sooner, because we were kind of doing a lot of different things in the beginning. And we were filing for patents for some crazy stuff that I can't talk about in case we end up using them like down the road. But some stuff that just was so out of left field, because we weren't focused on solving a specific problem. And so that's what I wish I would have really sat down and said, if it's not solving this problem, don't do it.
When you were in elementary school, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I actually wanted to be an archaeologist. That was my number one thing I wanted to do. I don't know if it was because Jurassic Park had an influence on me there or not. But the second thing was a talk show host. And now I get to live my dream being a podcast host. It's amazing.
So back to your LinkedIn profile. Absolutely loved it. You list your first job as soda jerk at Friendly's restaurant in New Jersey. Did you have any others off the books earlier before maybe it was legal to start working? Or was that truly your first job?
Yeah, well, my dad actually owned a car wash. And so I would go and I would work at the car wash, drying cars and painting the tires, because, you'd paint it with Armor All. And so I did that. And those are like my Saturday chores. So instead of after we'd make the bed and mow the lawn, we'd go to the car wash on Saturdays and get dropped off there and get picked up for dinner. And that was, those are my Saturday chores. And then I would also do landscaping. So, I'd get dropped off at a neighbor's house and I would just big pile of mulch. And for the whole week, I would just be spreading mulch. And so my dad grew up in Georgia on a farm and, football player. And so very much into manual work. And that was something that, those are probably my first jobs. Now, I didn't get paid very much. If my working at the car wash, I never got paid. And then doing the mulch, it was like, less than minimum wage. But it was just one of those things where we were not allowed to sit at home those summer months. So we had to get up and do stuff. Okay.
And what would you talk about your dad playing football? What's your favorite sport and sports team?
Oh, the BYU Cougars. I'm a huge Cougar fan. Love BYU. They almost had a Cinderella season. There was some really good things going on, but I love BYU football. That's pretty much the only sport that I will actually watch or listen to, at least. I'll listen to. I love Greg Wrubell. His play calls are just so brilliant. So I listen to BYU football, and that's the only sport that I'll actually watch by myself.
Okay, favorite city to travel to?
I love New York City because just an incredible food scene, an incredible vibe. I grew up right outside of the city, but I do have to throw in one of the most underrated cities in America is Las Vegas. Unreal food scene. I mean, they're just doing so many things. I don't gamble. I don't go to clubs. I don't drink, but man, I love me some Vegas.
I agree with you. Some incredible restaurants there.
Yeah.
Seem to go just twice a year for working conferences, but
right.
Did go 3 times one year because I did go see you two at the Sphere. So that was abnormal.
That's amazing.
And my son, last year we went to the F1 race. This year for Thanksgiving we were on a cruise. Next year we're planning on going because he'll be 21. So I promised I'd take him at the last one. It was funny. I don't know how. He's 6 feet taller than me, looks older, and every sports book was able to say, "Are you 21? Show me your ID." And they caught him at every.
Oh, no way!
He can't wait to go back when he's 21 next year.
Oh man.
Okay, talked earlier. You've been to 100 conferences. Who's your favorite conference speaker? And you can't name yourself.
Oh, well, that's easy. I wouldn't even make it to the top 50, but I would probably say one of our mutual friends. I loved hearing him speak recently at Kathleen Wood's event. And by the way, Kathleen Wood she is an incredible speaker, incredible person. So she's great. But at her conference, Jim Knight, he is so dynamic. He's so fun. I had him on my podcast. I know he's going to be on this podcast as well. I describe him as like a Guy Fieri meets Tony Robbins type thing. Like he's got such a vibe going about him. Such a good guy. Love his energy. Love his content. He's one of my favorite speakers.
Yeah, love Jim. As I mentioned earlier to you, although my crutch words that I still use, I have, Jim on my shoulder, stop it, knock it off. But I was fortunate to work with him for almost the 13 years at Hard Rock, and his development, his training got me from being scared as, a 10-year-old child at conferences speaking to the point I was able to get up in front of 800. And, he's just such a fantastic coach, trainer, and now has really, gotten to the next level as he, has gone out on his own and spoken to some of the, biggest companies and most unique military divisions out there as well.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So final question, Zach, what's something most people don't know about you?
Well, actually, I have it here. I pulled it out from behind my shelf. What they don't know is this right here is my first trophy I ever won. And it was actually for a acting competition. And so, coming from a family of people who get a lot of trophies, I think it was like really interesting that was the first one that I got. It was not a Super Bowl trophy, not an MVP trophy. It was acting. And, not a lot of people know that. But that's something that I'm like, I think is kind of an interesting little, factoid, and something that has helped me in my career with speaking and doing things like podcasts. And so I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the coaches that I had that, while it was a little bit weird for my family, I think they supported me as much as they knew how to support a kid that did acting competitions. But that was really fun.
Okay. And I'm going to do a follow-up. So on the acting, was it, pure acting, or was there some singing, musical, dance in there? Or
no.
Okay.
I have such a terrible voice. I love singing, and nobody loves hearing it. But man, you get me with a couple of Coke Zeros and a karaoke mic, and watch out.
Okay, well, Zach, that's unfortunately all the time we have for this episode. But thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation as we get into these holiday seasons. I know it will be a couple months before we see each other again at the next batch of conferences in the spring season.
Well, Brian, recorded or not, always love seeing you, my friend.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you to everyone for joining us. And here's to celebrating the industry we love and serve. Until next time, stay hungry for success.